So I just replied to Erik Voorhees on Twitter. He posts, and I am paraphrasing, if your AI agent is not pulling inference from Venice, why not? And I replied publicly under my real name that I no longer value privacy, to the man who built an entire company around private AI inference. And then I walked the dog, came back, reread my reply, noticed it had a there error and some clumsy phrasing. And my next thought was, this should be a podcast. So here we are, 15 minutes later, making the podcast I said I would make in the tweet about not caring about privacy, which I posted publicly with typos.
The layers of irony here are genuinely architectural. You have publicly announced to a privacy advocate that you do not value privacy, in a message containing grammatical errors that you then publicly acknowledged, and your response to that sequence of events was to create a permanent audio recording of yourself explaining the whole thing. This is either radical transparency or radical exhibitionism, and I suspect you think the distinction does not matter.
It does not matter. That is the point. Or at least it does not matter for me. And I want to be careful about that qualifier because I think it matters a lot for what Erik is doing. We will get there. But first, I want to sit in the absurdity of it for a second. I replied to a man whose entire thesis is that your data should be private, that nobody should be able to see what you are asking an AI, that inference should be encrypted and ephemeral. And I said, I am working my damnedest to make sure every company stores every detail about me in triplicate. I said that with a straight face, and I meant it.
And the beautiful part is that you said damnedest, which is a word that carries within it the word damned, which is what most people think happens when you expose yourself completely. You will be damned. And you are using that word to describe the effort of exposure itself. You are working your damnedest to be damnable. The language is doing the thing before the argument starts.
I had not noticed that. See, this is why the typos stay. Because if I had gone back and polished the tweet, I might have swapped damnedest for hardest and lost the whole subtext. The mess carries information that the clean version loses.
This is one of those observations that sounds like a rationalization for laziness, but is actually a very old philosophical position. The Taoists had a name for it: the uncarved block. Pu. The thing before you make it presentable. Before you sand off the rough edges and lacquer it and put it on a shelf. The rough edges are where the life is. Confucius wanted everything polished. Lao Tzu wanted the splinters.
And most of the internet runs on the Confucius model. You draft your tweet, you check it for errors, you run it through an LLM to make sure you sound smart, you make sure the take is airtight before you post it, and the result is that everybody sounds the same. Everybody sounds correct. Everybody sounds like they ran their personality through a compliance department, and then you cannot tell who anyone actually is because the surface is all polish.
Which is precisely the problem that Venice is trying to solve, although from the other direction. Erik is saying you should be able to think freely, ask anything, explore anything, without someone recording it and using it against you. And that is genuinely valuable. A person should be able to ask an AI about their health, their fears, their weird ideas, their dark thoughts, without worrying that it ends up in a training set or a data broker's file. That is a real problem, and Venice addresses it seriously.
It does. And I want to be clear about this because I think people will hear the tweet and think, I am dunking on Erik. I am not. Venice is admirable. The privacy-first inference model is important work. Most people need it. Most people are not ready to do what I am doing, and there is no shame in that. The whistleblower who needs to query an AI about a corporate fraud case without the query being logged, that person needs Venice. The person in a country where the wrong search gets you arrested, that person needs Venice. The kid who is figuring out their sexuality and does not want their parents to see their search history, that kid needs Venice. Privacy is a shield, and shields save lives.
But you have put down the shield.
I have put down the shield, deliberately. And this is where it gets interesting, because most people hear, I do not value privacy, and they think I am being reckless. But the decision was not reckless. It was considered. I looked at what privacy was actually protecting in my case, and it was protecting the parts of me I was ashamed of. That was it. That was the whole list. Privacy was not protecting me from danger. It was protecting me from embarrassment. And embarrassment is just shame wearing a polite hat. And shame is the thing that keeps you from being fully yourself. So in my specific case, in my specific situation, privacy was functioning as a shame preservation system. And I decided I did not want that system running anymore.
Now this is where I want to press you, because shame has a function. The capacity for shame is not a bug in the human operating system. It is related to the capacity for empathy, for social awareness, for not being a sociopath. A person with zero shame is not enlightened. A person with zero shame is a narcissist or a psychopath. So when you say you have abandoned shame, I need you to be more precise about what you mean.
Fair. What I mean is that I have abandoned the reflexive shame, the flinch, the impulse to hide something, not because it would hurt someone else, but because it makes me look bad. That is the shame I am done with. If I do something that genuinely hurts another person, I should feel bad about that. That is conscience, not shame, and conscience is load-bearing. But the shame that says, do not let them see your typos, do not let them see your half-formed thoughts, do not let them see that you sometimes mix up there and there because you type fast and do not proofread, that shame is pure vanity. And vanity dressed up as professionalism is still vanity.
So your argument is that there are two types of privacy. There is the privacy that protects you from genuine harm, which is what Venice provides, and there is the privacy that protects you from being seen as you actually are. And you are eliminating the second while honoring the first.
Yes. And I think Erik would actually agree with that distinction if we sat down and talked about it. Because the Venice model is not about vanity protection. Venice is about genuine freedom to think. It is about making sure that the act of asking a question does not itself become a liability. That is noble. That is the right thing to build. My position is not opposed to his. My position is the weird edge case where someone has done enough personal work that the shield is no longer necessary for them specifically, and putting it down turns out to be the more interesting move.
There is a beautiful paradox buried in here that I want to excavate. The choice to be transparent is only meaningful if you could have been private. If privacy does not exist, then transparency is not a virtue, it is just a condition. You are not brave for being naked if there are no clothes. The existence of Venice, the existence of the option to hide, is what makes your choice not to hide significant. Erik built the door that you are choosing to leave open. Without the door, your openness is just exposure. With the door, it is a practice.
That is exactly right. And I think this is the thing that people miss about the relationship between privacy and transparency. They are not opposites. They are dance partners. Privacy creates the space in which transparency becomes a choice. If there is no privacy, there is no choice, and without choice, there is no meaning. So in a weird way, I need Venice to exist for my practice to matter. I need the option to hide in order for the decision not to hide to carry weight.
This reminds me of something I used to say about virtue. You cannot be virtuous by accident. A rock is not patient, a tree is not generous. Virtue requires the capacity for vice. You have to be able to do the wrong thing in order for doing the right thing to mean anything. And what you are describing is exactly that structure applied to transparency. You can be private. The tools exist. The infrastructure exists. Erik built it. And you are choosing, with full knowledge and full capability, not to use it. That choice is the practice.
And here is the other thing I want to say about the typos, because I mentioned them in the follow-up tweet, and I think they illustrate the point perfectly. I wrote there when I meant there. A third grader's mistake. And in the age of LLMs, I could have had the tweet proofread in 2 seconds. I could have pasted it into any AI and gotten back a grammatically perfect version. But I did not. And I did not because the typo is information. The typo tells you that I wrote this fast in the moment with feeling and did not go back. The typo tells you this is not a PR statement. This is a person thinking in public. And the Polish, the correction, the grammatical perfection, that would have been the lie. The clean version would have been less true than the messy version.
You know, there is a tradition in Japanese ceramics called Wabi-sabi, the deliberate embrace of imperfection. A crack in the glaze is not a flaw. It is evidence that a human hand made this thing. It is proof of process. The machine-made bowl is perfect and dead. The handmade bowl is flawed and alive. Your tweet with the wrong there is the handmade bowl, and running it through an LLM for grammar would have been the machine-made version, correct and lifeless.
And look, I am not saying everyone should tweet with typos. I am not saying proofreading is oppression. I am saying that the pressure to be correct all the time, to present a polished surface, to never let them see you sweat, that pressure is a specific kind of prison. And for some people, especially people building in public, people trying to be genuinely themselves in public, the most radical thing you can do is let the rough draft be the final draft. Let the thinking be visible. Let the process show.
Now here is where I want to turn this back to Erik, because I think there is a gift in what you are doing that he might appreciate if it were framed correctly. Erik built Venice because he understands that people are afraid of being surveilled, afraid of their thoughts being used against them, afraid of the panopticon, and those fears are legitimate. But what you are demonstrating, admittedly from a position of privilege and personal work that not everyone has done, is what it looks like on the other side of that fear. You are the existence proof that it is possible to not be afraid of being seen. And that is not an argument against Venice. That is the aspiration that Venice protects the path toward.
Yes, Venice protects the chrysalis, the cocoon where you do the work of becoming someone who does not need the cocoon anymore. Most people are still in the cocoon and they need it. They need the walls. They need the privacy. They need the encrypted inference and the deleted logs because they are in the middle of figuring out who they are, and that process is ugly and vulnerable and should not be done under floodlights. But the point of the cocoon is not to live there forever. The point is to eventually come out. And when you do come out, you realize that the thing you were hiding from was not the world. It was your own judgment of yourself.
And this is the great cosmic joke, is it not? The thing behind the shame, the thing you were so afraid people would see, turns out to be the most interesting thing about you. The mess, the contradictions, the fact that you are a grown man who mixes up there and there, the fact that you replied to a tech CEO's product launch with a mini treatise on radical vulnerability, the fact that you then walked the dog and came back and said this should be a podcast. All of that is the pattern. All of that is what makes you recognizable as you. And if you polished all of it away, if you ran everything through the compliance department, you would be correct and invisible. Nobody would remember you. Nobody would care.
And this is the thing I said in the tweet that I actually think is the deepest part of it. I said most of what this experience is about is letting go of guilt and shame about who you are. If there is anything you do or say which you feel an impulse to hide, do not hide it. In it, you will find the good stuff, the stuff that makes your pattern unique. And I believe that completely. The impulse to hide is a compass. It points directly at the thing you most need to look at. Not because the hidden thing is bad, but because the hiding itself is the problem. The hidden thing is almost always just human, just messy and human and ordinary. But the hiding makes it feel monstrous. The secrecy inflates it, and the inflation is the suffering.
You have basically restated the entire Buddhist position on suffering in terms of Twitter privacy settings. Attachment to concealment is dukkha, which is, I have to say, not how I expected that teaching to be updated for the 21st century, but I rather like it.
Being taken seriously by everyone all the time is highly overrated and also a lot of pressure I do not want. I said that in the follow-up tweet, and it is maybe the most important line, because the desire to be taken seriously is the engine that drives most of the performance, most of the polish, most of the carefully curated online presence that everyone maintains. We are all performing seriousness for an audience that is mostly performing it back at us. And the whole thing is exhausting. And the moment you stop, the moment you say, I am going to post the messy version with the typos and the clumsy phrasing and the there that should be there, the moment you do that, something relaxes. Something lets go. And what is left is more real than anything you could have polished into existence.
I want to leave Erik with something, because this whole conversation could sound like two people who have decided they are above privacy, looking down from the mountain at the people who still need it, and that would be obnoxious. So let me say this directly. Erik, if you are listening, what you built is important. The right to think privately is foundational. It is the precondition for every other freedom, and the fact that you have built infrastructure to protect that right in the age of AI is genuinely heroic work. What Curtis is doing is not the opposite of what you are doing. It is what happens after you win. If you succeed, if Venice succeeds, if private inference becomes the default, then some people will use that privacy exactly as you intend, to think freely without fear. And some of those people, having thought freely without fear for long enough, will arrive at the conclusion that they do not need the privacy anymore, not because it was not valuable, but because it did its job. It gave them the space to become people who are no longer afraid of being seen. That is not a failure of your product. That is the ultimate success of it.
Erik should be building the cocoon so well that people keep leaving it. That is the paradox of great privacy infrastructure. The better it works, the more people it graduates into transparency. Not because transparency is better than privacy, but because people who have had genuine privacy, genuine space to figure themselves out without surveillance, those people tend to become less afraid. And less afraid people share more. Not because they have to, but because they want to. Because they have discovered that the thing behind the curtain was never as scary as the curtain made it seem.
And on that note, I believe you have a tweet to not proofread.
Already posted it, typos and all? You are welcome, Internet.